talk about opinions. They are like belly buttons. Everybody's got one. That's abundantly clear whenever you wade into online comments sections. But most are littered with schoolyard taunts, wingnut rants, or just plain nonsense. It's all prompted one publication to say, enough. Comments can be bad for science. That's why we're shutting them off. That's the decision of the venerable magazine Popular Science. This objective story on contraception was a tipping point for associate editor Dan Nosowitz.
It was straight science. There was a commenter who said that viruses are smaller than the pores in latex in condoms, and therefore condoms don't prevent sexually transmitted diseases. It's factually incorrect.
And allowing that kind of junk, Nosowitz says, is unacceptable. While many large websites like the New York Times or the Boston Globe actively moderate comments, it's a mammoth task.
Comment moderator is a full-time job, and we just don't have the resources to have one. And frankly, if we did have the resources to hire another person, I'm not sure that that is the way to make our site better.
Nosowitz says each news organization needs to make its own decision, but he does question the prevailing assumption that online comments are a necessity.
To have comments was the default. And we think that that is kind of backwards, that we should only add things to our publication when we think that it adds to the reader experience.
When we asked our viewers about the value of online comments, we got, surprise, surprise, a variety of responses, including this one from Andrew. It's a race to the bottom. I never read them and certainly never participate, except for right now. You can add your take here. Well, I enjoy reading them from time to time, but I think this is a good move by Popular Science. And they have said, by the way, that they will put them back up on occasion when they feel like it would be added value to a story, but not on something like the condom story or the contraception story that they're doing, which was straight science. There was no debating it. And then people were, offering up these other theories and that kind of thing. It devalues a story or an opinion when you start adding things in that make no sense. So I know, Dan, you've been on, you have a whole other thing. We should think comments shouldn't be anonymous. I agree with that, too. But every news organization should be forced to put a name with a comment, and that would weed out half of these trolls, if not three-quarters of them.
And the other half would be screening every comment before it goes up. And what they're saying at Popular Science is they don't have the resources to do that. And I suppose if you're going to have paid comment moderators screening all this stuff before it goes up, if that means that you have to have one less editor or one less staff writer, maybe that's not a good calculation. Yeah. So they've I tend to agree not everybody needs to do comments. I like them, but only when they're properly managed, and they apparently are not in a position to do that.
I think comments are very valuable, and I hope they find a way to put them back. I think it would be worth it to have them moderated the way other publications do. But you really do have to be careful. I was just thinking of an example. The last piece I wrote for the Wall Street Journal was a very plain story about why White Christmas was such a popular song, why it was the best-selling song of all times. Not only did somebody come back and say, well, it's written by a Jew, and let's look at Irving Berlin, this Jewish guy writing about White Christmas. And not only that, today, if you named that song, you'd have to call it Neutral Color Holiday. And I'm reading this, and then the comments became people commenting on that. Yeah. That's the key, is that when you get one really ridiculous comment up there, that becomes the story.
And that never should have gone up.
Right. So I think the way for them to do it, first of all, the brave move on their part. So when the reporter writes the piece, whatever it is, I think, and they get comments anyway, but they just don't publish them. Go through them and pick out two. And then maybe you say, here are two comments. They don't agree, but we think they have something valuable to say about what was written. And obviously the content of the comments would not be factually incorrect. That's essentially what the New York Times is doing by highlighting, and now they're putting next to the story a link to the best comments. That's what some newspapers are doing. But that's a resource. So if they don't have the resource, then the individual reporter, as they may wish, do that. And I think it'd be interesting.
I'd love to see comments from scientists who actually know about the subject, you know, talking intelligently about the subject, but rather than you know, throwing it out to the whole public. You know, trolls can lower the debate for everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the writers should be able to see those comments, though, because I really love that one. And I'm sorry everybody else had to see it, but I'm glad I saw it.
The other thing is that Twitter has really taken over comments as well, so you're never going to be able to rein that in. So, but a lot of people comment on these things in a different way. So by taking that down, there's still going to get comments.
Right.
Other way.
The Globe and many other news organizations post links to a lot of their stories on Facebook, and the level of comments there is of a much higher nature than on the news site itself.
Well, I thought it was interesting that in making this decision, they showed scientific studies that said, you know, readers that read those inaccurate comments or negative comments actually changed their view of the story. And I mean, it's just interesting to think that maybe science is in a different category. You know, we're looking at fact. Is that in a different category than politics or culture or something else that's debatable?
It's just disturbing. There are certain websites, they just can't do it. Like the Boston Herald doesn't do any moderating at all. And suddenly you get comments on, you know, a murder story or a rape, and these ugly, vicious, you know, they twist things around, and before you know, I mean, I'm embarrassed to say that I've even read some of these things. I think we made an issue out of it once before, where they twist the whole story around. Before you know it, half the people reading these comments probably think that's the, you know.
Oh, my mom can't even read the comments on my column.
Oh, I'm
like
sure.
she has a heart attack. Like.